Okay, you've done some market research and have an idea of what your revenue streams in your particular area will be. You've delved into the pertinent regulations, so you have a good idea of what those require, specifically the buffer zones. And so now you're ready to begin to evaluate specific properties and decide which would be a good, appropriate site for your compost facility. Of course, things like barriers to entry so people can't just wander on the site, road access, drainage, existing structures and surfaces are all key to your final decision on what property you're gonna choose for your composting facility. However, in this video, I want to show you how to greatly narrow down your search by focusing on these two things, namely the distance from residential areas and large contiguous areas that satisfy the buffer zones that are in the regulations. Property viewer like this is going to give you a lot of information like that and a lot of other information. Let's say, for the sake of an example, you're in West Tennessee. You're relatively near the city of Jackson. Decent sized city. You think it might be a good place for your business. I'm going to first turn off property lines. Okay, so here's the city of Jackson. You can see from the road pattern and the property lines that were up that it's very dense here, but then you have some other areas that are less dense. So you think, well, maybe I can have something in one of these areas to service all of these people and restaurants there. So let's go ahead and turn on some imagery here so we can get an idea of what we're looking at. And you can see that there's some farmland here, a lot of residential and urban area here. And you see a lot of area that's near it that looks pretty darn good in that it's not too dense. You're not right up against a neighborhood that might not be thrilled about having a composting facility. So you start to look at some of these. Let's click on the property lines to see, okay, these are decent sized properties. Maybe you could enter into an agreement with the landowner. Maybe you could buy it. Maybe you could lease it. So let's take a look at them. If you come in close, though, you start to notice a few things. Let me turn off this imagery to show you what I was talking about. Okay, so yeah, still along the edge of Jackson here. Again, some nice big properties. So you're not right up against a neighborhood. These look like they all might be good candidates, right? Now, if I turn off this imagery, I see this kind of symbol here, and it might be concerning. It should be. It's looking like it's swampy, right? And here we have this river here. It's awfully straight. Maybe it was straightened by the Army Corps of Engineers at some point, but you see a lot of wet areas. Maybe they're official wetlands, in which case you would not be allowed to have your facility there. And also you don't want to be fighting that kind of soppy weather. Let's see if this will pop up, flood map. It does. So you can see on both sides of this river in a wide area, you have this zone A. And you look up zone A and it will say, okay, that's a 1% chance a year of being flooded, also called the base flood or the 100-year floodplain, and that is specifically prohibited in the regulations. So, of course, you could try to get a variance, but it's starting off on the wrong foot. So, unfortunately, even though those look good at first, we don't want to waste our time. It's going to be a problem. Okay, however, I did, when I was looking around, notice that you can see there are a lot of residential areas here and here, but now we have like a commercial or maybe light industrial business here, and it's next to an as yet undeveloped property. Now, this is worth looking at. Whether it will work, I don't know. Let's take a look at some of these setbacks or buffer zones from the regulations. If you'll remember, one of them for ours is that your reception for food scraps, your initial processing, has to be at least 500 feet from a residence. The advantage of this kind of website is you can come over here, click on measure, excuse me, distance, we're going to want feet, right? And just pick a house. And as you drag it over by where we clicked on for feet, it's telling you how long this distance is. So I'm going to stop it about there, double click it, just to point out to you that distance is just over 500 feet, right? So if this is a residence, and it certainly is, then this whole arc in that area, we cannot have reception, we cannot have processing of food scraps, and you see there are several houses. So likewise, this one would prohibit out to about there too, as would this one, and I'm pretty sure this one is too. Now this doesn't mean that this property is off limits, but you need to be aware of it. So all of this area, we could even kind of draw a line out to here, and all of the area within that, we might be able to use it for some things, but not for initial processing of the food scraps. Now, if I turn off the imagery, you see that there is a body of water here. That should not be much of a problem because that looks like it's, we need to be 200 feet away from that, and before we even get to that property line, we are. Now, if we were to look back at some of those other properties that were too wet, you can see that they also are right by a river, so you'd have to be away from that. But continuing with this property, I see, in addition to being okay as far as the setbacks, the fact that it's right next to a commercial or light industrial facility is a big plus, because that means that there are going to be big trucks on this road. It can handle big trucks, and there aren't going to be like a bunch of houses where people are saying, oh my gosh, I don't want that big change. They're already used to having that kind of traffic here. And if you'll see, there's a major road here. I want to zoom out a little bit. And this major road actually, passes right by, goes underneath an interstate. So looking down the road, if you're being successful, not only could you get material and sell your product to the people of Jackson, you might be able to receive material from further away. So if you're going to look for a property for your composting facility, I highly recommend that you look for some sort of property viewer like this. It can save you from wasting a lot of time walking a lot of properties that are really not going to be appropriate, and maybe you might not even get permitted at all. And so you might get pretty far down the process and have to start all over again. So I hope this helps, and I will see you in the next step.